and welcome to another lesson of Arabi بالبيت. Today we're going to cover Form 2 verbs in the present tense. We're going to build on what we learned about Form 1 verbs, so if you haven't checked out those videos, click on the little box that appears on the screen. But a quick recap though, if you recall, Form 1 verbs are designated by the pattern fa'ala. Remember that the stem vowel is unpredictable in Form 1. It can take the fatha, kasra, or dhamma, and the only way to know which one it is to either be familiar with the verb or consult a dictionary. Now, the good news is that Form 2 verbs are a lot simpler. They follow a very predictable and recognizable pattern where the middle radical is simply doubled. Fa'ala. Notice the difference. Form 1 is fa'ala, Form 2 is fa'ala, with a shadda over the middle radical. It's always a good habit to memorize the past and present tenses side by side. So in this case, it's fa'ala yufa'ilu. Fa'ala yufa'ilu. Since we're only going to focus on the present tense conjugations, let's take a close look at the present tense yufa'ilu. Notice that in Form 2, the present tense short vowel indicator over the prefix is the dhamma, where in Form 1, it used to be the fatha. If you've been exposed to Arabic at all, you've probably come across a bunch of Form 2 verbs. And these are verbs like شرب يشرب كسر يكسر شكك يشكك وقف يوقف شوق يشوق and صلى يصلي. The good news is that almost all Form 2 verbs conjugate the same exact way, even the irregular ones. The only exception are defective verbs. These are verbs whose root ends with a waw or a ya, like salla yusalli. And today we're going to cover a sound verb, an irregular verb that behaves like a sound verb, and a defective verb. That way you'll have all your bases covered. But before we jump into conjugations, let's quickly talk about meaning. What does it mean for a verb to be in Form 2? Well, one of the beautiful things about Arabic is that it's layered and incredibly rich. Take the Form 1 verb dahika, which means to laugh. The Form 2 version is dahaka, which means to make someone laugh. In general, Form 2 verbs are what we call transitive. That's just a fancy way of saying the verb does an action to someone or something. And the receiver of that action is called the direct object, or what we call in Arabic, the maf'ul bihi. For example, if you wanted to just say the child laughed, you'd use Form 1, dahika at-tiflu. The child laughed. Notice there isn't a direct object. The complete sentence is the child laughed. If you wanted to say the child made someone laugh, say a professor, you'd say something like ضحك الطفل الأستاذ. The child made the professor laugh. Notice I used the Form 2 verb ضحك to make someone laugh. There's also رقص, Form 1, to dance, and رقص, to make someone dance. Another one is وقف in Form 1, which means to stop, and in Form 2, وقف, meaning to make someone stop. Form 2 verbs can take on other meanings, but transitivity is the bulk of it. Think about who is performing the action and to whom. And now we can get conjugating. Let's start with the sound verb كسر يكسر, meaning to break into tiny pieces or to shatter. Now, take a look at the conjugation chart. You'll notice that it's pretty standard. All the prefixes are what they should be, all pretty standard. The suffixes, the same thing. Now, none of this changed, but if any of this was new to you, go back and review those Form 1 conjugation videos. And now we're going to go over an irregular Form 2 verb and show you how it behaves just like a sound verb. And that one's شوق يشوق, meaning to fill with longing. Now notice this is irregular because the middle radical is a waw, and so this is a hollow verb, شوق يشوق. And you'll take a look. Notice that the waw remains in place in all the conjugations. The prefixes are standard, what we've covered before. The suffixes also haven't changed. So essentially this irregular verb behaves like a sound verb. And now the only exception are defective verbs. These are verbs whose last vowel is either a waw or a ya, like salla yusalli, meaning to pray. So here we have the conjugation chart. Now, one of the first things that should jump out at you is that the waw of the root in the present tense gets converted into a ya. So the root is sad, lam, waw. And notice that the ana conjugation, for instance, is ana usalli, anta tusalli. All those wows have been converted into a ya. The next thing that should jump out at you is that the final ya gets dropped in the enti, entum, entunna, hum, and hunna conjugations. And we've seen this happen before. This happened in Form 1 verbs. But let's take a close look at one of these to see what's going on under the hood that makes that final ya disappear in these particular conjugations. Let's go over entum tusalluna. So if we break this conjugation down into the prefix, the conjugated root, and the suffix, we have the ta maftuha for entum, we have salli and una as the suffix. If we were to combine all these together, we would end up with entum tusalliyuna. And now because the ya and the waw with sukoons on them cannot go side by side, the weak vowel, which is the ya, is dropped, and the kasra preceding the weak vowel, the one on the lam, gets converted into a dhamma for ease of pronunciation. Entum tusalluna. And the same exact principle applies to enti, entunna, hum, and hunna. Now, this concludes our lesson on Form 2 verbs in the present tense. These are a lot easier than the Form 1 verbs, but it's still a good idea to practice. And let me know if you have any questions. Shukran wa ila liqa.